So what we'll learn today is we will learn one simple daily regimen that can help improve our immunity, that can help with longevity and also graceful aging. There is anti-aging and also there is graceful aging. We'll learn a simple daily habit to improve our digestion. We'll learn a simple tip for our hair and eyes, and one hack that can make everything better, and some myths about exercise and other daily things that we do, daily practices that we have. And we'll talk about how to incorporate all of this into our daily life. But before I can introduce all of these, I want to set some fundamentals because some of you here are familiar with Ayurveda, some of you may have not been so familiar. So I want to cover some fundamentals so that what I'm going to recommend makes sense to you. Okay. So in Ayurveda, actually Ayurveda itself is not an independent, it is an independent science. It's a fully evolved science. At the same time, it is part of the bigger structure of science called the Vedic sciences. And Ayurveda specifically is an offshoot or an Upaveda of the Atharva Veda. And it is based on the Sankhya Darshana or the Sankhya school of philosophy. To simplify what I mean by that, one of the most, this is, okay. So in Ayurveda, we look at the entire universe as made up of the 5 basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. Now, everything in the universe, including our body, including what we eat, what we drink, the medicines or herbs we take, what we apply on our skin, all of these are made up of some combination of these 5 elements. And based on the composition or what is predominant among these 5 elements, there are 3 bioenergy principles called doshas. And the doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, as some of you may have heard. Vata is predominantly air and space elements. And as is the nature of these 2 elements, Vata is very light. In our body, Vata helps provide movement. So what are some of the movements in our body? The ingestion of food. We chew the food and then it goes, there's something called peristalsis that happens. That is governed by Vata. Similarly, elimination of waste. That is governed by Vata. Circulation of blood and nutrients. Even inhalation and exhalation of air that is constantly happening is also governed by Vata. So when the Vata in our body is balanced, then all these functions that I just mentioned happen in a smooth and undisturbed manner. When the Vata is out of balance, when it is hindered, then one or more of these functions can get impacted. For example, somebody may have too much bloating, or they may have constipation, or they may have diarrhea, or they may have shortness of breath, or they may have high blood pressure. All these indicate some malfunction of Vata. Similarly, Pitta is made up of fire and water elements predominantly. And Pitta's main function in the body is to provide the energy to transform and digest. That is the main function of Pitta, not just the digestion that happens in the stomach, the transformation that happens in our intestines, but also all the subtle transformation that happens even at the cellular level is governed by Pitta. We often say that this person has a glow to them, right? There's a radiance. Even that glow comes from a balanced Pitta. That's called Tejas. And again, transformation, digestion is the main function of Pitta. So when Pitta is well established, well balanced in the body, these functions of Pitta are happening in a smooth manner. When Pitta is out of balance, That's when there can be things like hyperacidity or burning sensation in the body, rashes on the skin, bleeding problems, excessive bleeding, or bleeding in the wrong direction, like blood coming out of the nose, for example. All that can happen when the pitta is out of balance. Kapha is the third dosha, earth and water elements. You can see these two elements are the heavier elements. So kapha is more heavy and hence also more grounding. So kapha gives the qualities in our body, in our system, that provide a structure, strength, immunity, lubrication. Our joints are lubricated. That is kapha. That is one manifestation of kapha. So when kapha is well established, well balanced in the body, all these functions of immunity, lubrication, strength, energy, all this is well governed. When kapha is out of balance, one or more of these functions can be disturbed. Now, as you can tell, all of us have all the three doshas in our body. In fact, every single cell in the body has these three principles or doshas. However, each one of us is born with a predominance of one or more of these doshas. And that which we are born with, that is called our Prakruti in Sanskrit, which in a simple terms means our nature, our constitution. And that stays the same throughout. So somebody who's more Vata dominant, they will be on the slimmer side. They'll be more flexible. They'll be more agile. They're more creative. They're more quick to move, to do things. They're very dynamic. However, when there is an imbalance of it, when there's too much Vata, they can become very restless. They can have a lot of dryness. They can be prone to constipation, or their joints may start cracking, or they may not be able to fall asleep. Similarly, if somebody has a predominance of Pitta, they are medium built. They're neither too thin, slim, nor are they too on the heavier side. They are medium built. They have sharp features. They have leadership qualities. They have good digestion, and they like to plan and execute. When there is too much Pitta, when there's an imbalance of Pitta, then that can result in them being, either they can be having pitta headaches. They skip a meal, they get a headache, or they can be very hard on themselves and others. It's often said that when pitta goes out of balance in a pitta person, they either get a headache or they give you a headache, right? So that is pitta. And then there is kapha. Like I said, when a person is kapha dominant, then they are more on the heavier side, and they are also very caring, loving, grounding. They're very compassionate. There's someone you really want. They'll really cheer you up, and they'll nourish you, they'll nurture you. We say Mother Earth because mother is nurturing, right? So that is the quality of a kapha person. When there's an imbalance of this kapha, there can be a tendency to hold on. It's accumulative tendency, greed, or heaviness, laziness. There can be inertia in the system. There can be dullness of digestion, dullness in the system, too much, for example, too much toxicity in the body accumulating, or too much phlegm in the system, too much heaviness, all that can happen. So a person can be born as Vata dominant or Pitta dominant or Kapha dominant, or they can have two doshas that are dominant. They can be born as Vata Pitta dominant, or Pitta Kapha dominant, or Kapha Vata dominant. Or in very rare instances, they can be almost equal ratio of all the three doshas. That's our Prakriti. That doesn't change. And it is always nice to align with our Prakriti. That gives us more harmony in life. Right? Now, any of these doshas can go out of balance in any person. For example, a Pitta person can have a Vata imbalance, and that can present itself as, say, for example, dry joints or dryness in the skin or dryness of the scalp. Similarly, a Kapha person can have a Vata imbalance and they can suddenly become very restless. So The goal in Ayurveda is to find the balance, to see what is out of balance and how we can balance these. And as you can, the common principle in life itself is that when you want to balance something, you use the opposite quality. For example, when there's too much dryness, you apply some oil, the opposite of dryness. When there's too much cold, you apply some warmth, right? So that's how we use the very basic principles in Ayurveda. Now, on that note, let's look into a little bit more about the qualities of each of these doshas. So Vata, like I said, is dry, light, cold. It's more rough. It's not very soft. And it is subtle and mobile. That's why you will see whenever, for example, in winter, you will see many of these qualities, right? There is dryness in the skin. There is, of course, there is cold. And the skin also becomes slightly rough. And what do I mean by subtle? Air is very subtle, right? It moves into the tiniest spaces. And it's very fast. It's fast moving. Pitta is more unctuous. Unctuous meaning it's more moist on the oily side. It is sharp. It is hot, light. It has a peculiar smell. And then it is free flowing and it is more liquid. It's not like Vata, which is dry and air-like. If you notice something very interesting about all these 7 qualities, is that these are all identical to the qualities of acid. And the digestive acids in the body are one representation. The digestive enzymes are all representations, or you can correlate them to the pitta in the body. Kapha is more unctuous, cold, heavy. It is slow, smooth, slimy, and stable. So there is more heaviness that comes in here. There is more, it's again cold like Vata, but it is heavy and cold. Vata is dry and cold. So these are the 3 doshas or 3 energy principles in the body. Now, like when I say energy principle, it's like gravity. Gravity is a principle, but you cannot see gravity. You cannot touch and feel gravity. But if I were to drop in, if I were to just leave the object here in mid-air, I can see the action of gravity on this object. It's falling down, right? Similarly, the doshas act on the bodily tissues. And there are 7 tissues. Everything in our physical body can be looked at as made up of these 7 tissues. What are the 7 tissues? Starting with and I will talk a little bit about digestion here. So our body is made from the food we eat, right? Our body has grown because we've eaten, and it's maintained because we are consuming food, water, air. That is the main input to our body. And for our mind, of course, it is the thought, it is also the sleep, it's the rest, it's positive energy, and so on and so forth. But the physical body is growing from the food that we eat or maintained by the food that we eat. So when we ingest food, the first dhatu or the first tissue that is formed from the food is what is called the rasa dhatu or the tissue fluids. So in our small intestine, in our digestive system, the digested or the digesting food gets transformed. It's called Aahara rasa, that is transferred across the walls of the small intestine into our plasma. And that is the first tissue of the body that is formed from food, and that is called rasa. Rasa can be correlated to the plasma, the lymph in our blood. The next dhatu or the next tissue is the rakta or the red or the blood. It's not just red blood, it's the blood in our system. So here our blood actually is, when you go for a blood test, when they draw, you see the red fluid that comes. If you remember high school biology, there is in our blood, there is the red blood cells, there is the white blood cells, there is the platelets, and then there is also the plasma and the lymph in our system, right? So that plasma goes under rasa, And the actual red blood, white blood cells, platelets, all that comes under Rakta. And the next tissue that is formed so each of these tissues, after it is formed, after it is well formed, it nourishes the next tissue. It's like it transfers its energy, or it's the food itself, the essence of the food, to the next tissue. So it takes 5 days to form healthy rasa, or healthy plasma, if you can put it that way, from our food. And 5 days later, it starts creating rakta, or the blood cells. 5 days later, it helps form the muscle tissue, the mamsa dhatu. After 5 more days is the medas, or the medodhatu, which is the fat and connective tissue. It's all the tissues that give us insulation, lubrication, and all of that. The next is the bone, or the asti dhatu, which gives structure to the body. The next is the majja, or the majja. We can call it bone marrow, but basically majja is everything that is filling the bone. So if you look at it, our whole head is like it's like a bone, right? The skull is made up of many bones that are fused together. And inside that is what? Our brain, our nervous system. So all that is also part of majja. And the finest, last tissue is the reproductive tissue, which is semen, sperm in men, and the egg, the ovum in women. So all these 7 tissues have their own functions. The rasa is responsible for nourishing the body. That's why whenever a person is very tired, fatigued, if they eat something, if they have something that is nourishing, something like a nice soup, or some rice, or some khichdi, or some fruit juice, they immediately feel nourished, because these foods have an affinity to immediately nourish the rasa dhatu. The next is rakta, which is it's called jivanam, or it enlivens. And that is not hard to understand, because blood, or red blood cells, are what hemoglobin carries oxygen and supplies it to all the cells in the body. So it is enlivening. The next is mamsa, or muscle, whose job is plastering. And also it helps us do work. When you want to lift something, it is because I'm able to use my muscles to act. The next is meda, which gives lubrication and also insulation. And also it also helps give a certain structure to the body in a way. And the next is asti, which actually gives, the main job of asti is to give structure. I mean, my hand is like this, my arm is like this, because there is a steady, strong bone, or actually a couple bones here, right? Otherwise, it would be like, it would just fall off, right? And then the next is majja, which is, like I said, it fills the bone, so there is bone marrow, and also the nervous system, the nerves, all that come under majja. And the last is shukra, which helps give rise to a whole new life, whole new body from a person's or two people's bodies. And the next important concept, so to wrap up on the dhatus, so the 3 doshas act on the 7 dhatus, which make up our body. There can be imbalances of any of the doshas in any of the dhatus. For example, if there is too much vata in the bone, what does vata do? It is very light and cold and mobile. So it can create more porosity. So osteoporosis can happen. If there is too much kapha, say in the blood, that can cause stagnation, that can cause problems with circulation. It can slow down circulation. A person can have altered blood pressure, or they can have other issues, right? So the doshas can get imbalanced in any of the dhatus. So that's another important aspect of an assessment. The next important concept to understand is Agni. Agni literally means fire, and Agni in our body is a representation of the fire element in nature. So it is commonly said that we are what we eat. But in Ayurveda, we say we are what we digest. Because you may be eating the most healthy food, but if your body is not able to digest what you eat, then it is of no use. In fact, what happens if your body is not able to digest the healthiest of foods or medicines or herbs you're taking, it becomes metabolic waste. And if that is not removed from the body, I'll come to that in the next slide, that can actually be more harmful. So Agni is what gives digestion, the energy to transform, and also at a subtle level, it gives the glow, the stability, the clarity, even in the mind. Less like how when we eat food, we have to digest the food. The body has to digest the food. Similarly, at the subtle level, all the thoughts that are going into our system, our mind, right? All the ideas, all the news, all the information, if it is not processed, if it is not digested, if the essence of it is not absorbed and the waste is not eliminated, then that can also cause a stagnation at the mental level, right? So a strong Agni is needed for both body and mind. And so it is said in Ayurveda that Shanti Agnau Mriyate, Yukte Chiram Jivati Anamayaha, which means if the Agni is well balanced, if the Agni is good, then a person lives a long, healthy life free from disease. On the other hand, if the Agni is dull, it leads to death. It can mean death at the cellular level. That's what cancer, right? There can be death at the cellular level, or the whole person. Some organs can become disabled, or the whole body, right? And what is ama? I just mentioned this. When the body is not able to digest because the Agni is not good, then the improperly digested food. So what happens when we eat food? A portion of our food gets converted to nutrition and it builds our tissues. It builds all the cells in our body. It gives us energy to do work. To walk, we need energy. To exercise, we need energy. To work, we need energy. So the food provides the fuel for that. And some of it is eliminated as waste, as urine, feces, sweat, etc. But if the digestion is not smooth because the Agni is not good, then a portion of the food can remain undigested and remain stuck in the body. And that's called ama. And ama is the precursor to toxins. When ama remains in the body for a long time, that's when it becomes toxic. Like, for example, if you don't take out the trash regularly, the whole place starts stinking, right? That is similar to what happens in our body if the waste or the improperly digested food is not eliminated from time to time. And how do you know there is ama? There are different signs of ama, including heaviness in the body, sluggishness, breathlessness, sometimes excessive salivation. The elimination is not smooth. The person is not having proper bowel movements or excess bowel movements, or there can be disturbed elimination in urine, etc. Or there can be a loss of taste. They don't feel like eating. They don't feel like whatever they eat is taking too long to digest, or they feel very dull. Sometimes there is also coating in the tongue, but that's not the only sign of ama. Sometimes the tongue can be clear, but there can be still ama in the deeper tissues. So now that we've covered doshas, dhatus, agni, and ama, the reason I covered all of this is to help define what is health. The word swastha in Ayurveda or in Sanskrit is loosely translated to health, but Shushruta, one of the most ancient Ayurvedic Vaidyas or physicians, who was the founder of surgery, even modern surgery, has learned a lot. He was the first surgeon in the world. He defines health or swastha as sama dosha, sama agnishcha, sama dhatu malakriyaha, prasanna atma indriya manaha swastha iti abhidiyate, which means one can be called healthy when the three doshas are balanced, when the Agni is balanced, when all the dhatus and the elimination, the waste, the urine, feces, and sweat, and all the functions of this, the functions of ingestion and elimination are balanced, and when the senses, the mind, and the soul is happy, that is when one can be called healthy. In fact, the word swastha literally means one who is established in oneself. So that's the definition of health. Why is Vata the master dosha?
Because it's airy and light, and it's our nervous system, our breath. So it affects its movement, so it pushes the other doshas. But it's
Exactly.
also the first one that gets imbalanced.
Yes. Yes, it is all of this. Yes, Archie, that is true. But there is no movement to the other doshas and dhatus without Vata. If there is no Vata, everything becomes, it's like an airport having no runways or no ATC, right? It is, everybody is stuck, right? Like that. So without Vata, nothing moves. So, it is said that Pittam Pangu, Kapam Pangu, Pangavo Maladhatavaha. Pitta is lame, Kapha is lame. All the dhatus and all the wastes in the body are lame, or lame as in handicapped. If Vata doesn't, if Vata is not there. It is Vata that carries imbalance or buffer, healthy functioning of all the dhatus and other two doshas. We need healthy Vata. When Vata is vitiated, when Vata is in excess, it's moving all over the place. What happens when there is a strong wind? Things fall, right? Things move out of their place. So that's what happens when there is excess Vata. It can disturb, it can move Pitta out of its place, Kapha out of its place, it can move Rakta out of its place, and so on and so forth. So that's why Vata is considered the primary dosha. If Vata is well balanced, it is more likely that everything else is well balanced. And if Vata is aggravated, sooner or later, it can aggravate the others in the system. So one's very simple. So now let's see what can we do to balance Vata. So going back to my slides, also the although all the doshas are present all across the body, like in every single cell of the body, the common major sites of Vata are the large intestine, the waist, the lower back, the lower limbs, bones, ear, and skin. That's why you may see that lower back pain or constipation or pain in the legs, especially in the knees, ringing in the ears, all this comes when there is, this comes very quickly when there's Vata out of balance, because this is the home site of Vata. And we also spoke about how Vata is more, let's go here. Vata is more dry, light, cold, rough, subtle, and mobile. Excessive movement can also cause an imbalance of Vata. Somebody who does excessive exercise, like is running on the treadmill for 2 hours, that can also cause an Vata imbalance. Yes, oil massage is one of the easiest, simplest remedies for balancing Vata. A small addition to that, I would say a little warm oil will make it even better, because it has exact opposite qualities of Vata. Oil is unctuous, unlike Vata. A warm oil is also warm, unlike Vata that is cold. It is more heavy, it's more grounding, unlike Vata, and it settles the Vata in the system. Now, how do we do this? What is the best way? If you just apply oil anytime and just leave it, is that okay? You apply oil and go to bed, is that okay? What do you think happens if you do that? See, oil is also very similar to kapha, right? So if you apply a lot of oil and just go to bed, you're increasing kapha, which is also not a good thing. You're increasing not just kapha, but stagnation in the body. So the best way to do an oil massage or abhyanga literally means doing oil massage. And there are two ways of doing it. One is a therapeutic abhyanga, meaning you go to an Ayurvedic center or an Ayurvedic therapy place where you just lie on the massage table and you have one or two therapists who apply a lot of oil and give a nice massage, and then they let you take a steam bath or shower after some time. The other and the more recommended practice in Ayurveda, it's recommended for every day, is to do a self abhyanga, a self massage with some warm oil before you take a warm shower. So about 5 to 7, at least 5 to 7 minutes, you leave the oil on the body. Now, what are the important things to keep in mind here? I already said we don't leave it on the body for a long time. We don't let it cool on the body. That can cause stagnation. The second thing is after applying oil in about 5 to 10 minutes, it's good to take a warm shower. What does that do? The warmth opens up the pores. It helps the oil get absorbed better. So it's a good idea that if you're doing abhyanga and taking a shower, there is no need to soap off all the oil. You can apply soap in the armpits, private areas, that's fine. But you don't need to completely soap off all the oil. After you take the shower, there may be a little glossiness on the body. That is good, especially in winter. It's almost like a moisturizer. That's one thing. The other thing is, what can you do between applying oil and taking a shower? A few options. One is you just stay in the bathroom with a bathrobe. Make sure it is not getting too cold in there. The other option is if you're doing some exercise that is going to make you sweat, you can do that. But you should should be warm. Either you should be sweating or you should stay in a warm place. Why? Because we again don't want it to cool. Exercise is one way, exercise that makes you sweat is a natural way of sweating. The other way of sweating is to sit in a steam tent, like you may have if you have gone for an Ayurvedic massage, they'll make you sit in a steam tent. But nothing should be overdone. The heat should not be also too much. Moderate warmth is recommended. Moderate amount of exercise is recommended. Now, where do you need to be careful? Be careful when you apply the oil, especially on the feet, because you can slip if you're not careful. Especially, we are especially more cautious in Ayurveda when we recommend this to older people. Why? Because balance is already an issue and a fall is more risky for an older person because there's already weakness or degeneration in the bones. So the chances of fracture are higher. So it's very important that you take precaution to not slip or to be careful with that. And this can be practiced every day except when there is too much heaviness in the system. You feel you're eating, but your food doesn't get digested. That means there is already heaviness, sluggishness in the system. So you take it easy on those days. When somebody is having a fever, when somebody is having cough, cold, congestion, or any such sickness, it is not a good idea to do abhyanga then. The second is not when somebody is having their periods. We don't do abhyanga then. And the same applies, I mean, of course, when you have had a surgery or all that, it is not a good idea to do. This is something that you can do even when you're traveling, because when you're traveling on a vacation, etc., there is more vata that builds up. So this is a simple remedy that you can do to calm that vata down. The other important thing is how do you do it, right? So it is important that you when you do the massage with the oil, you do it in the direction of your hair. How does your head on my, for example, on the arm, it is in this direction from the elbow towards the wrist. That's the direction in which you do Abhyanga. So all across the body, you do it along the direction of the hair. Around the joints, you can do in clockwise motions on both sides. What oil should you use? Actually, in Ayurveda, we have a lot of therapeutic oils, herbal oils, each of which has its own indication or its own benefit. For example, if there is more if we are trying to, in the initial phase where we are trying to stabilize vata, we use something lighter, like for example, sahacharadi. If you want to do more nourishment, we have something called dhanvantaram. If I want to do more nourishment, then we have something called mahanarayana. But at the very least, if you are not working with an Ayurvedic practitioner, you can use either coconut oil or sesame oil. Make sure it's good quality, it's organic. In winters, because it is cold, you can use a more warm oil like sesame oil because it has more warmth in it. The latent heat is more. In summers, or if you're in a hot area, then you can use something like a coconut oil. Make sure you just warm it up. Don't heat the oil directly on the stove top. You can either take a small bowl of oil, leave it in hot water, or if you're traveling, you don't have all that, you can just rub the oil in your palms, make it warm, and use that. Okay, so that's one simple daily practice. And the benefit of doing this, it is said, Abhyanga macharet nityam sa jarashrama vataha. The benefit of doing oil massage every day is it slows down aging. It makes you look more youthful. And it arrests the vata aggravation that happens in your body. It brings it opposes it. So it's one of the simplest ways to keep your body more immune, more healthy, more anti-aging, if you call it, if you want to call it. And also in the joints, it makes a huge difference because as we age, the lubrication in our joints starts reducing. So around the joints, when you do your Abhyanga, if you apply more oil, it helps nourish the joints and lubricate them. Same thing for the skin. And I'll let Aarti share more about some of the products that are available. The skin also needs a lot of nourishment. The skin, especially in winter. How many of you have noticed that in winter your skin is drier, right? So it needs hydration, not just water hydration, but it needs more moisture. It needs more. It's called snigdhata, which means oiliness, but more nourishing oil. And also, it helps nourish and hydrate the skin. It gives a glow to the skin. And most importantly, the action of applying and massaging the oil, it improves your circulation. It is very good for your sense organs. Okay, so that is one. Ali, I'll take your question in just a bit. The second simple remedy or change that you can make. It already came up, drinking water, but I'd like to make a small addition to it, especially for most of us in North America in winter. I would recommend drinking warm water. Now, why is that? Any guesses or any thoughts? Not guesses, some of you may already know. Why do you think warm water is good?
Keeps your digestive fire going.
Keeps your digestive fire going. Very good. Yeah. Anything else? Yes. So one is the digestive fire. Now notice that what is our, if you notice our body easier to absorb, yes. See, no matter how cold it is outside, our body maintains its temperature, right? And prevents clogging of arteries, yes. So if you notice, the body's temperature is around between 98 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And the body does everything to maintain that temperature. It's a process called homeostasis. No matter how it may be 30 degrees outside, but your body will remain at that temperature. So when you drink ice cold water, the body has to work to bring the ice cold water to its temperature. So it has to put that energy. The Agni has to use up its energy to bring the water up to your body temperature. And now you have actually wasted or used up, I wouldn't say wasted, used up some of the energy that your body needed for digesting food to warm up that water, right? So if you already have a weak digestion, you have wasted so much of your Agni on warming up the water. The body prefers food that is closer to its temperature. Most of the food, I'm not saying every single thing has to be that hot or warm. Once in a while, if you eat an ice cream or a cold dessert, that's different. I'm not talking about that. But as a daily practice, what you consume on a daily basis, it being warm always helps. Of course, if you're having a lot of pitta in the body, having a lot of burning sensation, then you don't have to drink hot water. But in general, it is like for all of the reasons that some of you mentioned, it's easier to absorb, it helps clogging of the arteries, and even in the gut, it helps loosen up and cleanse some of the toxins. Now, another important aspect of warm water that we don't often look at is if I were to give you some rice, raw rice, would you be able to digest raw rice? No, right? It can create problems. But a cow can eat raw rice and digest. Why is that? Because the cow's digestion is very different. It has a different level of Agni that can actually process or cook the rice, the raw rice. Whereas we cannot do it. And hence we have to first cook the rice outside the body. And then we eat that and the body can absorb that. Similarly, cooking water, I know we don't think of cooking water, but when water is cooked or boiled, it becomes more digestible. So even if you boil water, let it cool down and drink that, it is not the same as drinking cold or room temperature water. So good idea to drink warm water. At the very least, room temperature water. Not a good idea, especially in winters, to drink ice cold water. Okay. And just a bonus on that, depending, again, this is not a general suggestion, depending on your digestion. If your digestion is on the weaker side, you can drink some CCF tea. CCF is cumin, coriander, and fennel, kitchen spices. You can either dry roast them and mix them in equal proportion, dry roast them and keep them in a jar. Just take 1 teaspoon of this mix, boil it with about 1 to 1.5 cups of water, and you can have 1 cup of this CCF tea if your digestion is on the weaker side. If you're having too much heat in the body, you can just make a coriander tea because coriander is not heating, it's actually cooling. There is also the option of ginger tea, but I would be more cautious. It is good. When to drink this tea? You can drink this not too close to your food. You can drink this in the afternoons or in the mornings, but don't do too much of anything. And also, it's on the subject of water as well as tea. It is not good to drink a lot of water just before or after a meal. At least half an hour to 45 minutes before and after a meal, it is not good to consume a lot of water. If you're thirsty or if you feel a lot of dryness in the mouth or the throat, you can sip a little bit of water. And how much water should you drink? What do you think?
Half your body weight in ounces.
Okay. Okay, that's a good, that's one way of looking at it. But Ayurvedically, we say drink to your body's hydration level. That means you need to listen to your body because if you're a kapha person and if it is winter, you may not need so much water. But if you're a pitta person and it is summer, you may need more water, right? So it depends on, so that's why it's important to listen to your body. And more than chugging a lot of water at one time, it is good to sip water. Take a few sips of warm water as and when you feel thirsty. You can drink a little bit more also. Half a glass is also fine, but don't like drink a liter of water at one time because that can also dull your Agni. And that's okay, RR. You can do that. And that is more specific. It depends on what's going on in your system. That is fine. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is sleep. Needless to say, we all need 6 to 8 hours of sleep every day. Everybody knows this. But Ayurvedically, what is important to know is when you sleep. Let me ask you this question. If I sleep from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., that's 8 hours of sleep. Is that as good as sleeping from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? Is that the same? It's the same amount of hours, 8 hours from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's 8 hours from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. Do you think it is the same? Why not?
I think ideally it's best to sleep around the pitta time so that your liver can detoxify a lot of things. So like 10 to 2.
Yes, that is correct. So there is something called a body clock. And let me just pull that up. I have a new laptop, so my slides are at a different place. Okay. Okay, so I'll quickly talk about it. So just like how we spoke about these doshas, each of them has their own location in the body and so on and so forth. Different times of the day, different times of the night, and different times of the year, and different times of our lifetime are governed by different doshas. So in a day, actually, let me give you another interesting, I think we'll wrap up in the next 5 minutes and open up for questions. In the first 20 years of our life, there is more kapha in our system. That's why children are able to grow. They put on weight, they grow in height, because it is the growth and the energy of the kapha that gives that energy. The middle portion of our life, about 20-ish to 50-ish, is where pitta is dominant. That is why it gives us the energy to accomplish, to build a career, to build a family, to build a home, to build wealth, and so on and so forth. And 50-ish and beyond is where the vata sets in. That's where there is more degeneration. You start losing memory, joints become, cracky, and all that happens, the vata phase of life. Similarly, in the day, the first 4 hours starting 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the kapha time of the day. This is a good time to meditate, use the grounding energy of kapha to meditate, slow down. I mean, not slow down, but relax and prepare for the day. And also have a light breakfast because the Agni is not so strong. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I couldn't find my slidely. I had an issue with my laptop today. I'm still using a different laptop. So forgive me for that. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the pitta time of the day. And that's where the digestion is at its strongest. And that is a good time for eating a full meal or a bigger meal of the day. 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is the vata time of the day, where there is more restlessness. Sometimes there's fatigue. There is a slump, people say, often in my consultations. That's because the vata is kicking. It's a good time to exercise. It's a good time to do some yoga, some stretching, and some even meditation. It's a good time for that. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is the kapha time of the day. It's good to use the energy of the kapha to slow down, wind down, and go to sleep. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is the time of pitta, and this pitta is where all our digestive organs detox, cleanse, and relax. So it's important that we are asleep in this window. The more amount of time you get to sleep between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., the more energized and the more healing and the more relaxation your body gets. That is why sleeping in that window of time is so important. And you can check it out for yourself, or you may already have observed it. The more sleep you get in that window of time, the better it is. If some people stay awake too late and they sleep, like I said, at 2 a.m. and they wake up late, but they've missed the entire healing window. And they may feel okay, but in the long run, it shows in their digestive system and a lot of metabolic disorders. This is a common pattern that we have found. So that's on the sleep. And what one more thing that I wanted to talk about. Any questions in the meanwhile?
Kumar, I had a question about the self abhyanga. How
Yes.
important is it for the oil to be warm?
Yes.
If
Okay, like I
it's
said,
room
it is all,
temperature.
yeah, room temperature is fine if you cannot warm it. But if you make it more warm, not hot, but warm, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. But if you're not able to, it's okay to rub between. And the other important aspect is to stay in a warm place. You can use a space heater if you can, but not let it cool on the system. It works better if you are able to warm it. If you're not able to warm it, at least room temperature is still fine. Okay. The other thing is about exercise that also came up that I wanted to talk about. And exercise is very good to keep the vata in balance because, when you exercise, even the breath becomes after the exercise, even the breath becomes more. And if you feel your nostrils are blocked, then you actually feel good after you exercise. So exercise helps with the vata. But too much exercise, especially in the after 40, after 50, it can lead to more vata imbalance in the system. So moderate amount of exercise. If you're over 50, it is definitely not good to do a lot of intense exercise. Better to slow down. Most vata balancing exercises are yoga asanas and walking. If you're used to doing intense workouts, I'm not saying it is a wrong thing, but it is good to keep it in balance. And the thumb rule is to do exercise to half your strength. That's what Ayurveda says. Ardha Shaktya, half your strength. What kind of food is good to eat in the late afternoon? I'll come to that because that's a very subjective question. It depends on who you are, what you're eating for lunch, what you're eating for dinner. So healthy snacks like if your digestion is good, some nuts, soaked or roasted nuts are good. Fruits are good in the late afternoon, but not too close to a meal. So that's one thing. And the other thing is all these are good ideas, but never overdo anything. Like everything has to be done in moderation. That's important. Too much hot water or too much oil. Nothing in excess is also good. Another easy takeaway is to not use hot water on the head or in the eyes, on the eyes, because these are very sensitive organs. This is not good for the hair or for the eyes. So when you're taking a shower, lukewarm water over the head, lukewarm to room temperature water over the head, and for the body, you can use warm water. This itself can it can preserve your vision, it can preserve the strength of your eyes and also the hair.